Ready?
Yep.
Great.
Always ready.
All right. Well, hello. Welcome everybody to the HeartMind Alchemy Lab Podcast. And I am your host, Holly Copeland. And my goal in these shows is to bring you rich and heartfelt conversations that bridge ancient wisdom and modern science at this yummy intersection of consciousness, technology, human potential, and awakening. And I am super, super excited today to have dear friend dear friend Stephen Altair. Welcome, Stephen. You are muted. I can't hear you.
I'm also fairly still, obviously. How are you, Holly? It's lovely to see you, and everybody who's listening. Thank you for taking the time to join us. So, I promise you're in for a treat. So this is going to be whenever I get together with Holly, the whole world opens up, right? We're open to awakening together and the power of awareness for each one of us. So Holly, thank you for the invitation, and thank you everybody for joining us. It's truly a blessing and an incredible honor always.
Well, thank you so much. Absolutely. And I'm really, really excited for today's show. Stephen is a frequent guest and a friend of so many here on HeartMind Alchemy Lab and so many other places. You're just such an amazing person. And your list of the things you do is just strikingly long. So you basically need no introduction, but just for those who might not know Stephen Altair's background, he's a Vedic astrologer, he's a mystic, he's a meditation teacher, an author. He co-founded the Conscious Accelerator and Wisdom Path Project. We co-lead workshops and coaching together on HeartMind Alchemy, and so much more. That's just like a tiny little sliver slice, and he's a dear friend. And
Holly, thank you. And also raising our vibration with
thank you. Yes, yep. And raising our vibration, of course. Thank you. And raising our vibration. And we're gonna talk today about how he blends the soul insights from Vedic astrology with mind training, alchemy, psychoanalytic techniques of Western astrology, and ancient Tibetan astrology and awareness training. So it's a pretty incredible mix. I know that for myself, as I've learned from him what astrology really is, it's really opened my eyes to the depths of astrology far, far beyond what I think most people think of as kind of a possibly helpful tool for, understanding our world. It is so much richer than that and deeper than that. And so, this fusing of astrology with actually the deep awakening path is what I'm coming to understand through him. And so, I'm really excited that we'll be actually diving into that today. So Stephen, I actually want to just open it with that question that we posed at the very headline of this. Can astrology help the world awaken? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, that is exactly how I see it. When you consider that awakening itself, so let's forget about astrology for a moment, but awakening itself is actually coming to an understanding that every single moment and every single breath and every single thought, feeling, and perception is pure awareness, right? Now that includes the stars, includes the forests, includes, as Kevin and I were just talking with neuroscientist Kiefer O'Sullivan, that it also includes MRI scans, chakra diagrams, torus fields. You go right throughout existence and you will find examples of awakening when you're awake, right? When you're aware, you're aware. It's as simple as that. So can astrology be used? Yes, in exactly the same way as you might use breath awareness when you have a deep and powerful understanding of astrology itself, and actually understand what it is and the way that the ancients have used it, because that was the way that I was trained. You start to understand that awakening itself happens right throughout your life. I mean, you can use, as we've often discussed, Holly, in terms of even struggles, pain, suffering, and tension can be the most powerful assistance for awakening. The very tension of a struggle that you're going through can be an awakening moment, can be a point of liberation. So can astrology be used in the same way? Yes, of course it can. And of course there are special techniques. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Now, there's a little proviso. You gave me a lovely introduction with all the things I've done. I can't claim any of those. They're all due to the blessings and gratitude that I have for the lineages that I've been trained in. So I've done more than 40 years training in so many disciplines. And that's what I want to speak to, is that so anybody who joins the course, for example, is going to be open to a lot of different techniques and practices that these great ancient masters have used in the practice of astrology to come to awake awareness. And when we look at some of the famous astrologers, we see that there were many who did, in fact, not only use that, but were awakened masters themselves. So it always intrigued me. Oh, and awake and aware master who also studied astrology. Then that I really looked deeply into that as a kid. So I'll share my screen just as I go. So there'll be things here of interest to everybody as we go on this journey together, because it really is a shared journey, right? It's not mine alone. This is something that everybody has the opportunity to share with the stars. And so everybody, hopefully, at this point can see the stars in front of them on their screen as we dive into what astrology for awakening really is. So I started off at a very early age. I was part of our local astronomical, an observational lab out at One Tree Hill in Auckland when I was before I was 5. My dad knew I loved space from, I think I got switched on to Star Trek, Thunderbirds, and loads of other sci-fi programs, because my dad was a sci-fi buff. So I think I started reading them as early as I learned how to. I wasn't really so interested in picture books. I wanted to read all those sci-fi books, and Dad used to read them to me, right? So it gave me a lot of insight into, oh, there's a whole world of space and astronomy. So I was actually interested in astronomy first. And I wrote to NASA when I was 5, and I wanted to be on the first one-way flight out to Alpha Centauri, because I was convinced that the world was being well looked after, and perhaps we should get to know our nearest neighbors. So that was and NASA did kindly write back to me. I still got the letter, and told me that I wasn't quite old enough at the age of 5 to be going on a space flight, but that when I was 18, maybe they might have developed rockets with enough technology to go to Alpha Centauri. But as you know, we're not quite there yet, but we're on our way. I'm sure Elon Musk or some of these new, Space One, SpaceX, Space whatever are going to get there, hopefully. So I really had this early curiosity, both from having a very strong lucid dreaming experiences as a 2 and a 3-year-old, but right through from this early, knowledge and love of space. And so at the same time, I wondered about astrology, because I found out very early on that there were, in fact, great, scientists, people throughout our history that believed or had some knowledge and often equated an alignment of astronomy and astrology. So I was curious about this. And one of the first ones that I came across, and this is Swami Sri Yukteswar, for those of you who don't know him, who is Yogananda's own guru. And I was curious, Holly, that a great master like Swami Sri Yukteswar, because obviously Yogananda had such a deep love of Sri Yukteswar, that this wonderful master was also an adept and a master in astrology, in Vedic astrology. So from a very young age, I became curious about why this great master would want to delve into astrology, which at certain times you read the newspapers and you think, astrology is just that little paragraph in the newspaper that says today that I'm going to have a terrible day because my Mars is kind of running awry of some conjunction with Venus, and it doesn't look good for my relationships today, but tomorrow will be okay. So, I mean, we're all familiar with that kind of stuff that happens in the newspaper. And of course, that is not astrology. That is just really somebody's curious opinion about some personal aspect of an astrology chart, but it's not the stars. It's not awareness. It's not awakening. It's just a whole lot of stuff and bother that we've got enough of anyway. So I was curious, what is it that would lead a great master to spend his whole life doing Vedic astrology? So Swami Sri Yukteswar evolved a system of the cycles of this planet. And I found this absolutely amazing as a young teenager, because I came to Yogananda's work at the age of 13. I also came to alchemical work and understanding of Tibetan practices at a very young age. So I was very fortunate. And one of the things that Swami Sri Yukteswar commented on that intrigued me no end was that he looked at the whole cycle of this planet. Now, to me as a young kid, and a teenager, to think of that in that kind of terms, so we're talking still about awakening and awareness, it brings a whole different awareness, right? We're usually focused on our everyday life, just this moment and that moment, what we're going to do tomorrow, what we did yesterday. But when you start to think of the cycles of this planet as being in ascending and descending arcs, you start to get a really vast feel of what awakening means, and that even that the entire collective of humanity might be awakening. That was quite an aha to me as a 13-year-old. I sort of thought, what? The whole of humanity is engaged in this? How exciting, right? And he spoke about this as being Dwapara Yuga. And Dwapara Yuga is said to be a period of technology, knowledge, expanding forces, the electrical, the atomic, the finer, subtle energies. And again, what Kevin and I often speak about, subtle energy meditation practices, that's this era. This is the age of Dwapara Yuga. And then it lasts until 4100, which I have no doubt few of us will be here to see, but we might actually, if we decide to reincarnate to this planet, we might decide we want to come and see what happens as it shifts into what's called the Silver Age, which is a greater age of great expansion, then the Golden Age, which is the age of highest spiritual culture. So even to think in these terms was a real expansion of awareness. I thought, how did they calculate this? How did they actually look at the ascending and descending cycles of the planet? And certainly if you look at it, you compare, say, 500 years ago to now, although you might sometimes wonder when we look at a pandemic and a war being fought in Afghanistan, you might wonder in our reactions to some of these things how we've actually progressed. However, in terms of technology, I think people are aware there's an incredible opportunity for using technology like artificial intelligence, or what I call awake intelligence, AI, to bring about new currencies of unconditional love, or as you're talking with Sky, the currencies of synchronicity, or the currencies as we do on the wisdom path of wisdom and awareness. So perhaps there is an opportunity to really make the very best use of technology and really connect with wisdom and awareness and awakening. So astrology looks at cycles. It looks at cycles within the human being, within the human body, within our energy field, within the cycles of the planet and the universe itself. So in terms of expanding awareness, when you don't maybe have never given thought to that, and suddenly you wake up to the fact that, oh, we are actually in a collective. I think people really feel this sense of central unity right now, how important it is that we really are one humanity. We really have a central religion, or a religion of unity and kindness, right? As the Dalai Lama often says. I mean, that truly is our central spiritual guiding force at present, and that there is really one being, one thing, one unity. I think all of us are feeling that, and that's very much part of this expanding Dwapara Yuga age. So that intrigued me. Wow, there's these enormous cycles that happen that I really wasn't aware of when I was 6 or 7, and then suddenly when I was 13, 14, somebody exposed me to it, and I thought that is astounding. And these cycles actually all relate to astrology science. I'm sure many people have said or heard, without really thinking much about it, oh, we're in the age of Aquarius. That some of those famous songs that were made up about being in the age of Aquarius. So the astrological signs are all part of our being. The chakras in our energy body are also related to the astrological signs, or really it's the constellations. So there's not only a human body, astral body, causal body, but a cosmic body, right? And we have, just as we have an intimate connection to each other and to the flowers and trees in our garden, so we have an intimate relationship, when you think about it, to the stars, to the cosmos, to the energies in the cosmos. And when you think that the stars and the energies in the cosmos have been around forever, right, in a funny use of the word, and yet we so rarely even consider our relationship with them, that we're more likely to consider our relationship to, you know, the driver in the car in front of us because something has happened and we didn't like it, right? We're much more present to things going on in our immediate vicinity than we are to the enormities of the cosmos and the cycles that occur. So that also open, you know, again, speaking to awakening and awareness, a lot of awareness practices teach us about spacious awareness. And there's no more obvious assistant than space itself, right? The vastness of space, the vastness of the cosmos. And without having a really direct relationship with that, we simply remain in our own little cocoons, and we don't realize that the stars are part of our family, just as the sun is. You know, I think everybody's aware at the moment of the wildfires and the increasing temperatures and climate change and these extraordinary floods that are occurring even as I'm speaking in Japan right now. They've had these enormous floods up north, and all over the world there are these changes. So we're actually intimately connected, you know, with the sun and the earth and the moon and the relationships to these heavenly bodies. So why wouldn't we have a relationship with the planets and get to know the way that the spheres move, you know, the harmony of the spheres? So if we're going to harmonize our own physical body, we also, in awakening and awareness, would want to learn about our relationship to the cosmos. We're not separate from it. So when we start to think that way, then we start to look at these traditions, you know. So like I said,
Can I just ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
Just when I hear you say, when I look at this image and I hear what you're saying, I mean, in this image, you are the cosmos. Like
Exactly.
each of us is a representation of the cosmos. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Exactly that. So each one, and without having a relationship to the cosmos, of course, because the felt sense of how we experience things is so incredibly important. If we just have a conceptual awareness, oh yeah, space is out there, the stars, yeah, right. There's no real deep felt sense. And we know from our awareness practices that the felt sense of spacious awareness is a key cue to going beyond conceptual practices or conceptual knowledge. So in the same way, when we start to realize, oh, we are the cosmos, you know, we literally are the cosmos. It is such an aha. To actually be aware of that potentially can open you to the vastness of the cosmos itself, because you suddenly, you know, when you look at a lot of the cosmic conscious experience of some of these wonderful masters, from Ramana Maharshi to Padmasambhava to Yogananda and so on, to all the great yoginis, right, like Yeshe Tsogyal, the mystics like Saint Teresa of Avila, they all describe their experiences in terms of a very cosmic experience, a greater than, a vastness that's beyond description, being able to travel, you know, Yogananda often used to describe in those cosmic consciousness, you know, seeing the unfolding of the entire cosmos in front of him, that this unfolded within his being, and he could see into the hearts of atoms and planets and stars. And you recognize that the reason that many of these great masters are able to perceive such vastness is because they have this genuine relationship with, just as you said, being the cosmos. We are literally, you know, when you look at some of the ancient, you know, biblical terms, like we're made in the image of God, and equally we're made in the image of the cosmos. We have the stuff of stars in our very atoms. Right this moment, you're breathing in a molecule of Christ or Buddha, right? And also, equally, you're breathing in a molecule of a star that was destroyed eons ago, and yet its past is alive in you now, and equally so is the future. So there's these so all this very linear perception we have, and this very closed perception of, oh, okay, our world's just, my house and my family and the things that operate around it. Right? That's a pretty small view of what absolutely is present. So there's something remarkable about getting this realization of, oh, we are the cosmos, and the cosmos lives in us. And when we have a felt sense of it, it opens this power of awakening and awareness. And so does that help a little bit? So but you're pointing out the wisdom. I mean, I'm not. What you said was exactly true. We are the cosmos. Our body is literally cosmic blueprint. And I'm going to be going more into that when we talk about the torus field and the biofield and so on, and its relationship to astrology, because it's really very powerful for people to realize that. And that's really what I'm teaching, is about the awakening power of astrology, not just the interpretation of your chart.
Which at the heart of which is exactly that realization, because the realization that you are the cosmos through astrology is that it's again pointing to awakening.
Correct. Exactly.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure you wouldn't like to lead this conversation? I just love where you're going with it, Ali. So in my years of practice, and as you know, I was taught personally by the Dalai Lama, and I've also been and worked with Ayurvedic doctors in clinics in all different parts of the world, and because traditionally in both Tibet and in the Vedic traditions, an Ayurvedic doctor will work with a Vedic astrologer. So I've worked with a number of different doctors in their clinics where we diagnose and use Vedic astrology to diagnose and provide remedies. And in the courses that I'm teaching in the fourth segment of the course, so they're in like 10-week groupings, in the 30 to 40 week section, we go into how to diagnose, how to read, how to work with all the elements, the yogas, the yantras, the mantras, the chakras, the herbs, the aromas, the essences, the lifestyles, the energy awareness, and so on. So there's a very specific system that you use if you're working with doctors, and it's the same. So I'm bringing up the Dalai Lama because it's the same in Tibet. Is that the Tibet Medical Institute is part of the Tibetan Astrological Institute. So they work together. They're not separate. The astrologers and the medical profession work together and diagnose and prescribe. And it's a really beautiful system. And so again, like Swami Sri Yukteswar, I was really curious that the Dalai Lama, gets both diagnosed plus uses astrologers plus, for prophecy, for understanding the future, for understanding the future self. And so he's spoken a lot about that over different times, about the power of astrology and about how he's used seers, trance mediums, astrologers, and so on in the Tibetan practice. And whenever I'm speaking a truth about somebody, I get a really bright blue light, and suddenly there was a bright blue light that appeared in the room. So obviously, the Dalai Lama is present. It's probably not just the Dalai Lama that's present, but as you know, he has many past versions of himself as he's reincarnated. And one of my favorite connections over time, because in one of my past lives I was present with the fifth Dalai Lama, so I have a really deep love and devotion to the fifth Dalai Lama and his visions. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about those later, because they were very much related to the cosmic vision, understanding cosmology, understanding the way that astrology played a part in these ancient Tibetan traditions like Mahamudra and Dzogchen. They were an integral part of it for such a long time, and including now, because the Dalai Lama obviously still avails himself of astrologers and the Medical and Astrological Institute. So when I've traveled in Tibet and Nepal and been part of the Tibetan communities, it's so obvious that it's an integral part. I mean, a child is born and they have an astrologer, a sage, who helps the parents understand the future self, envision this future self of the child. And I think that's where it's incredibly valuable. These days, many of us are taught. I was talking to a lovely mindfulness practitioner, Samantha Chun, yesterday, and she was talking about how she's really connecting to her future self and is doing these practices for people. And I've become aware that this is more and more people are tuning in. If you're aware of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, you're aware that he works a lot with bringing the future into the present. And I think this is part and parcel of the way astrology works. The reason that you look into dashas, for example, which are the future periods, is that you can actually see the unfolding of your future self. And you can tap into that. You can tap into the dashas because you know what they're going to be, and you can retrieve information from your future self to assist you in the present. So there's a whole different attitude you have to astrology when you actually understand it from that perspective. So yeah, the fact that the Dalai Lama was so enamored by astrology, and Swami Sri Yukteswar, and then I was also trained. So I was trained in the Tibetan ways of astrology, and I was also trained in the Western ways of astrology. Now, so here we have Saint Germain, and Saint Germain is considered the Chohan of the savior of the seventh ray, or there's lots of ways of describing it, but his practices were considered, again, deeply astrological, understanding and astrology in terms of understanding the cycles of life. And so I was trained in it. You can see Archangel Metatron's cube and a lot of and we're going to speak to that too, about the importance of the geometry of awareness, of awakening, and so on. Because any of you that are into sacred geometry will know that there is a reason for form, right? Form can bring us messages, information. One of my favorite numbers my daughter's favorite number is the infinity symbol, right? And one of my favorite ones is 1 to the power 0. Because I always thought 1 to the power 0 when I was little, because I loved maths when I was a little kid. I always thought that 1 to the power 0 was this person standing with this, oval of space, that was infinite, and that was kind of infinite consciousness, because 1 to the power 0 is of course infinity, right? So I thought, oh, of course it's a person standing in infinite awareness, right? It made complete sense to me as a young budding mathematician. But anyway, yeah, I adored maths, and my daughter's probably going to take that same love of maths, hopefully, into her life, because she's really into, she always comes to me at breakfast table, and she's sitting there going like this, and she's, Dada, what am I drawing? And I say, oh, I always make up something else. Oh, it's an egg. No. Oh, it's a 0. No. It's infinity. Yes. So, it's lovely, right? Lovely to imbue the sense of the wonder and awe of, everything that our lives hold, especially things like maths and science. So I was trained. Saint Germain's system was, involved, closely connected with the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, the astrology, alchemy, archangels, and tarot. So there was a correlation between all these aspects. So when you look at the Tree of Life, for example, the center of beauty, which is that gold center right at the center of the tree, actually has a relationship to, it's called Tiferet in the spheres, has a relationship to the heart center, the Christ center, has a relationship to astrology and the sun, has all kinds of connections that you make to the different aspects of how does astrology relate to alchemy, archangels, and tarot. And there are different systems. So I will point out that in different systems, they will talk about different chakras relating and corresponding to different planetary influences. And again, there's a good reason in terms of awakening, because when you see, so I particularly use Yogananda and Swami Sri Yukteswar's astrological system, because it's related to energy awareness, so I'll speak about that later. But just to say that the importance of this, right throughout our traditions, if you look at astrology, it formed the basis of so many of our ancient cultures, from Egypt, Babylonia, from the Mayans, Peru, through to China and Japan, all the way through to India and Tibet. It's in all those ancient traditions. And as a young kid, this intrigued me curiously. I thought, all these ancient traditions, you know, the tradition of the sun kings and the moon queens, or the sun and moon kings and queens in antiquity, they aligned entire civilizations and, you know, civilization epochs and periods with astrological significators. And we know that even now, when so many people have paid attention to the Mayan calendars, and even the gene keys that a lot of people are looking at the moment have direct correspondence to astrological significators. So it's really curious. You know, it abides today in you know, very updated versions, but still those same ancient influences underlying them. So when you look at these, so I'm just going to speak a little bit about the astrological ages, and right throughout our planet, we have these symbols, you know, like Stonehenge, which was used again for astrological ritual and had a relationship to time and the cycles of time, and again, awareness of the cycles of time. So when you look at that and you realize that we've heard of these astrological ages that we sort of take for granted. Yeah, okay, we're in the age of Aquarius, or we're passing through into, as Swami Sri Yukteswar would say, into the Dwapara Yuga, or the age of technology, and they correspond, right? They correspond to zodiac signs. So they've been linked to that, almost like as if they're in our cultural subconscious, and they've been lying there and they're evolving all the time along with us. So when we look at people that throughout history, you know, everybody's familiar with Nostradamus, I think, and the power of his astrological predictions over a long period of time, you know, right through to describing in specifics, like 2014, describing a particular Indian prime minister and the correlations to his very unusual writings, all the way through to Evangeline Adams, who predicted the stock market crash of 1929. And she was a brilliant astrologer with many, many followers over that time. And of course, the ones that believed it, they actually gained from the stock market crash of 1929, because they followed a prediction, and she was incredibly accurate, right through to Claudius Ptolemy, who aligned astrology and science. So his works are still used today. He's considered a very, you know, both a noble scientist and a noble astrologer. And I think that you know, there are great beings throughout our planetary history that have recognized the alignment of astrology and science. So there are many mystical practices also, and I'm just going to speak a little bit to those that are associated with astrology, and that have been part and parcel of many of the ancient practices without us realizing that many of the foundations were in the stars themselves. So the Dalai Lama has a secret temple. So it's not where he is now, but in his original palace, the Potala Palace. Or he has a secret temple which shows, as you can see here, shows the progression from the body to the cosmological body. So it goes all the way, you know, across your screen, through the elements, through into mandala, and then into multiple mandalas that eventually go into the cosmos itself. So there was this strong relationship of cosmology. And in fact, in the west wall of that particular secret temple, the west wall is devoted to Dzogchen practices. So a lot of people don't know, a lot of people haven't even heard of the secret temple. And each wall is devoted to a different practice. And the practice of Tegal, which is direct realization, the esoteric nature of it, and this is in the Astrology for Awakening courses, we're going to go deeply into some of these practices, is that they were related to sun, moon, sky, the cosmos practices. So, and you can naturally develop some sort of affinity of this, in this. And in fact, Kevin Shaninger and Kiefer O'Sullivan and I were just having this talk about the incredible importance of the gaze, or what I'd call the infinity gaze, is that when we look on our graphs, so for those of you that are graphing our your, you know, on EEG using Muse or some other headset, we quite often get what we call artifacts or movements And I'm going to leave you to watch the video when you actually get, because Kiefer gives a brilliant explanation of it. But one of my small points that I make in the video is that when your gaze is really still, then you're just like you're doing now. If you hold your, don't look at me while you're listening to this. If you look over the screen, be aware of the space, be aware of the felt sensation of the space all around you, and hold your eyes still. So just be still for a moment and let them be uplifted just slightly, and hold them very still. The body still, so let your hands rest. Just be aware that the body's still. And the eyes are still. And your mind starts to approach a really deep absorption in a very simple way. Still body, still mind, gaze is still, right? And then if you extend the gaze into a point of space ahead of you, so just say between you and the wall, you can feel it, right? Oh, there's this felt sense of this vastness of space in that space. And then extend it outside your room so that you're still, you're still. Gaze is still, your mind is still, and you extend it out beyond the room. So there's this perception, right? There's this felt sense of space extending out. And then you extend the gaze out even further. See if you can touch the sun. Right? That's a long way. But what's happening, there's a quality, right? You can feel it. Right? I'm almost feeling like I'm starting to lift off the seat because I'm aware of the vastness and the quality of infinity in my gaze. Right? So go past the sun and out into the cosmos. Extend your gaze infinitely. So it's still, and your mind's still, your body's still. There's a sense of awe and wonder. It's like a child exploring the universe. Right? And it's still space. And then open up to the boundarylessness of your gaze. Right? In the simple quality of the gaze, you can find such incredible purity and vastness, boundlessness. Right? And you unfold that space into space. And then allow this space to come back again. It's still space, right? Just outside your walls, it's still space. Back now into the space between you and the wall, it's still space. Go into the space in the center of your head, still space. Bring your awareness into the back of your skull, still space. Go behind you onto that point behind the wall, and then drop awareness up and into that right rear corner of your room, still space. Bring your awareness down into that space of the heart, the cave of the heart, Hridaya, right, which is just a fraction to the right of the heart. It's the physical heart. Still space. Everything's still. It's just this vast sense of what's present. Presence. No history, no past, no future. Just this vastness. Right? So just come back. Try not to look at me too much. Just be aware of the spaciousness of everybody present, right? There's this collective presence you can feel now. Everybody listening. It's turned into this stillness and vastness. Everybody present is present. Right? What a wonder. What an awesome opportunity for our planet. Just simply to be in oneness together in vastness and this non-conceptual awareness. So if you come back in and still bring your awareness, but bring your awareness with the stillness of presence. As you look at what I've got on the screen, it's quite amazing if you look at this with stillness, right? Keep very still as you look at it. So this is the mandala of the 5th Dalai Lama's secret visions. So this is actually from his own secret visions library. It's a very rare book, actually. I was given it as a gift by a community which I left a couple of years ago when they said, oh, we've got a few, more than $1,000 to spend on the computer. I said, yeah, I know just the computer that I want. They said, what is it, Apple? No, I said, it's called the 5th Dalai Lama's computer. They said, what? What's that? I said, oh, it's a secret vision. They said, oh, okay. I said, is it a brand? No, I said, no, it's a very rare book. So one very kind gentleman scoured the planet for me to find one of these rare manuscripts. So that was their gift. And this is actually a graphic. This is actually one of the fifth Dalai Lama's visions. And it's a mandala of the cosmos as he saw it, and the 8 deities of the cosmos. So it's a cosmological representation of awareness. And it's a beautiful representation. I always look at this, fall in love with it, because it's it's so simple, and yet it's so beautiful, especially when you know it's come from the mind of a very realized luminary and a master, and that this was how he saw the awareness itself. So the chakras and the planets have direct correspondences. And so in astrology, this is a very important inner practice. So we have generally in most of these ancient traditions, we have what's called the outer practices, which were taught like the sutras for the average person. And so that's the astrology most of you know. And they tend to be practices like, okay, my sun is in Aquarius in the 8th house, so I'm a budding technologist, and I'm really curious about research and secret things because it's in the 8th house. So there's quite often, that's the outer aspect. The inner aspect, so there's an outer aspect, an inner aspect, and a secret aspect always in these traditions. So the inner aspect is this, beginning to work with the subtle energy body and this felt sense of how do you work with the interior planets in your subtle energy system, because in fact each chakra is related to a planet, and once you understand how to work with that in the subtle energy system, it can bring about incredible awareness and Shakti, Kundalini experience, and so on. And then the secret aspect is the nature of mind practice itself. How do you truly recognize and stabilize this vast, and in terms of the cosmos, infinite awareness, this emptiness of infinite possibility. So the chakras, as you know, especially in the Vedic systems and in the Tibetan practices of awareness, the chakras each relate to elements, and they also relate to particular yogas. So you can see here, if you look at the Anahata chakra, or the 4th chakra, or the heart chakra, it has a syllable, a seed syllable, yam, and it also has an element, air, and it has yoga, bhakti, and it has particular qualities, and it has a whole lifestyle associated with it. So in the astrology course, we go through chakra by chakra, and we actually learn about how to, not only how to activate them, but how to live them with awareness. Now, these chakras and planets actually relate directly. So this is Yogananda's Swami Sri Yukteswar's system, and many of the Vedic traditions use the same system, where the base chakra, that really rooted part of your body, and the Muladhara chakra is Saturn. The 2nd chakra, so the sacral chakra, the Shakti power, Swadhisthana, is Jupiter and Venus. So you can feel how that relate. Venus is love and Shakti, and Jupiter is expansion. So there's this expansion of energy in the 2nd chakra. The 3rd chakra, Manipura chakra, right there behind your navel, is Mars. So we know, from Qigong, from any of I did years and years of Kung Fu and martial arts practice. And of course, there's great focus in Qigong practices within those of the Manipura chakra, the belly, the power that comes through that, and Mars. So I've seen some wonderful things, of martial artists and done them myself, I mean, breaking of boards and concrete blocks, of course, you could do that. I did that. I could do that jumping over people and smashing things, but it's actually much more curious to look at what happens when you concentrate this quality of this Mars energy in your belly, how that can bring about, again, awakening, awareness, clarity, openness, and so on. And then Venus. So you'll notice there's a double position for Venus in some of these systems. So Venus is also the heart. And you can understand there's a natural connection between Shakti and the sacral opening. So of course, the wonderful divine feminine in our world is giving birth from that energy, from that womb energy, and equally this open-hearted awareness. So sometimes we focus, meditation on the brain and the up, and we kind of neglect our heart, or neglect the belly or the womb, or in this case, the Venus energy, which is really very potent and deep in both the heart and the womb areas. And then Mercury, of course, the energy of communication, the Vishuddhi chakra, and then the Ajna chakra. So the sun and the moon, there is a polarity to many of you will know, if you sit back in the rear of your skull while you're meditating, or you're forward in your third eye, there's a different relationship, right? There's like a sun and a moon positioning, and the same with Sahasrara. So Sahasrara, being open, limitless awareness, does not have in this system a planet that is related to it. So a little curious story for you. So years ago, when I was into astrology, I was really into Kriya Yoga practice, and I met a ufologist by the name of Steve, who had this amazing experience that he was a well-known Aussie rules, so rugby or league, or Australian rules is like all on its own. He was Australian rules, let's call it rugby professional. And one day he had this visitation, as he says, from these ETs, extraterrestrials, and they gave them this technique, which they told him at the time was a technique for transcending body and touching the light body, and using a technique involving the planetary system. So seeing the solar system as both a transmitting and a receiving system on a much larger scale. And I'd considered this for I trained with Steve in these systems, and I certainly found they did exactly what they said. They could call starcraft, call animals, communicate beyond time and space. So it was a very potent experience in what the possibilities of consciousness really are, to be limitless. But the curious point here is that they used these beings from these other dimensions. And I have to say, if you met Steve, I knew him before, and he looked a regular, Aussie rules player. He's a tough fella, big, strong. He was married to one of New Zealand's most famous runners at the time. And they were both a lovely couple. And the weekend after this happened, everything changed. Like, his hair actually turned a shock of blonde hair, and his eyes turned a radiant blue. And I'd seen him the day before, so it's like, how can this be possible? And he was told that the energy of this inner energy body bore a relationship to the cosmos, and that by actually engaging this internal energy system, particularly using the powers of Venus and Jupiter. So I found that particularly curious, because these energies of Venus and Jupiter are related to the chi, or the lower Dantian area and the heart area, that by using these, that you could liberate the energies up and out and connect to star systems, connect to directly to other civilizations. And when you consider it, Yogananda's system, for example, cycles energy around the chakras as planets, and in a system called Kriya. And the extraterrestrial being, Steve didn't know anything about Kriya. He had no experience in meditation or any of it. He was a definite, up until the Saturday when he connected with these beings. On Friday, he was, loved beer, the races, loved rugby or Aussie rules, loved sports, and he hadn't done any of this training. And on the Monday, when I met him, he had all this information. His physical characteristics had changed dramatically, so he didn't even look the same person. And the energy that he brought through was speaking about this connection to the cosmos through the solar system. And the site, instead of cycling around the planets in the inner energy body, he cycled around the planets. You can imagine doing a Kriya Yoga cycle, if any of you are familiar with it, cycling the breath and the Taurus breath around planets. So instead of cycling a Taurus breath, if you're familiar with that, and I'll show you in a minute, around your crown chakra, these extraterrestrial beings pose the idea of cycling it around the planet Venus or the planet Jupiter. So you can understand, right? It naturally expands your sense of awareness. And I thought this was uncanny because this is spoken about in Kriya, about connecting with the actual cycles of the planet. So you can see I've listed them here, the different speeds of the planet. We know the speed of the sun is a year. We know the speed of our ascendant in astrology is every 24 hours, because every 24 hours we reach actually the point that we were born again and again and again, right? So if you're born like me at 4:40 in the morning, there's a particular point in the cycle of the earth that goes back to that same point of 4:40 in the morning every 24 hours. So it intrigued me to expand my awareness beyond that into actually connecting with the cycles and the orbits of the planets, which was what the extraterrestrial civilization advised my friend to do in order to connect beyond the earth. And it seemed to make it had some bearing of logic, and having tried it for a number of years, it worked remarkably. So we were able to do some things that astounded large groups of people, including connecting to orbs. I still remember sitting on the beach with him, and he said, so does everybody want to do this? And there was varying degrees of fear and trepidation and joy and exhilaration as people said yes. So this was to a large group, and we were out in Bethel's Beach in New Zealand. And the next moment, so we're connecting with this, and those of you that have done UFO spotting with night goggles, you will realize that we were without goggles and we were doing these energy exercises. And then at a certain point on the horizon, we could see a series of orbs, really deep, sort of cobalt blue orbs. Now, of course, they didn't look big at that point, but then they flew straight towards us and over our heads. And about the height above me of my ceiling. So this is only, 3 to 4 feet. But these were massive. These were like house-sized orbs. They were not small. They were enough to make you gasp in complete awe at the glorious nature of manifestation in our universe, and that truly we're not alone, right? And he had a adept ability at that, because he was the one that had connected with for whatever reason. I suspect it was because his body was so potent, because I know, we went on retreat and did 2 weeks of these exercises of, instead of generating an energy in the physical body, we generated energy in the celestial bodies. And by doing that, the energy, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. I was literally like a light bulb. So it was incredible. So when you look at this, so that immediately for years gave me an intense interest in the power of astrology to awaken through connecting with planets and the Taurus field. Right now, I mean, Holly's an expert in the biofield, and so this natural understanding that there is a field of energy around our body. Now, for those of you that say, I haven't experienced the biofield, now you have experienced the heart's electromagnetic field, right? We know when somebody walks into a room and they're full of joy, you kind of feel expanded in their presence. And when somebody comes in and they're contracted and angry, you kind of, pull away. And that's a natural response to this frequency in the field that people are generating. So the power of the electromagnetic frequencies in our body is, so in the book Energy Medicine by James Oshman, there's this wonderful piece where near the beginning of the book, he outlines the 32 plus senses. We're normally just aware of the physical senses of the body, right? And he speaks about the subtle energy senses, and even our sense of, he speaks about the sense of invisibility, the sense of gravitation, the sense of the electromagnetic field, sense of the ultraviolet, radiation, and so on. And so you can relate. When we look at our eyes, out through our eyes, we perceive a stable, static world, right? It seems like things are moving, but the walls are steady, right? Of course they are. And the earth is steady. It feels solid. Of course, we're mostly unaware that the earth is spinning and the everything's moving, and so is the sun around other parts, and the sun and the whole solar system is moving at great speed through the galaxy, and the galaxy itself is expanding and contracting, right? We don't normally bring our awareness to that in every moment. So when we do, we can begin to understand that what we see and perceive with our limited senses is only a small part of the picture. Same way as if you hold up two playing cards and you take them out to your peripheries, there's a point at which they disappear and it's only a really short distance away from your head, right? So there's a really narrow level of perception and sight, for example, that we have. Now, so the biofield, therefore, in the human, in the torus field, are naturally existing fields, and I particularly love the way that the biofield tradition, or the sound healing and sound, I often call it sound alchemy traditions, speak about that we hold events, circumstances, experiences, struggles, joys in our field. And when you look at Eileen McCusick's work, her beautiful pointing out about our relationship to a sun star, an earth star, to the chakras, to the relationship with time and space and nature, to the fact that on the right side of our biofield, that there is certain embedded experiences going right out to that outer edge of the field, which is preconception. So you can see down here that she's broken it down into an example of an age breakdown, where right and close to your body, it's like the age of whatever you are now. And as you go outwards in the field, there are the experiences that we've stored right out to conception and birth. So not only are we generating fields from the heart, but there's a biofield that stores our experience. And when you think about it, when you think about, say, an experience that happened that was a bit of a struggle a few years ago, and it's so easy to recall, right? You can even connect to the emotion of it, then it's still there in your field. It's still there. And that's where I think the incredible wisdom of the human biofield and the torus field is so important. Now, the reason I'm laying these foundations is because when you look at the astrological relationship to the biofield, you see that right throughout our cosmos, the human biofield extends into the Earth's magnetic field, also in a toroidal shape. That the fundamental nature of, you look at the black holes, the wormholes, you notice their shape, the way that they work with the energies of those systems, and you look at them, the shape of existence itself, and the incredible power of spirals in nature, of the nature of the, I often think of Reiki, right? Those of you that have done Reiki and can connect to the chakra symbol in Reiki, right? It's a spiral shape. It's got a whole torus field that you generate in the mamas or chakras of the palms just by activating it. So the torus field exists in the human body, in that biofield, in the earth, in its magnetic field, therefore in all the planets, and in the cosmos. So the torus field is like a multiverse. Through the torus field, we can actually tap multiple dimensions. And again, talking to astrology and awakening, we can tap into past lives and understand them, and future lives and understand them, because, or the future self, we can envision and understand events that occur in our life through, going back to the biofield, through understanding that the biofield, if the biofield stores energy and information, then beyond the biofield, there is also stored the energy and information of our past lives and our future self. And I really like some of the ways that the toroidal hologram of the cosmos itself is presented in terms of energy and information. You start to understand astrology, why there was such an emphasis from the ancient masters on a continuum of past information being just as important as the continuum of future information, and that it's not linear. we tend to think of this as, oh, okay, I had this past life and it's, it's really bugging me because it's interrupted my connection and relationship with somebody, and I'm really pissed off at this person because they did this to me in a past life. That's just, look, that is not awareness. That is not awakening. The awakening awareness of consciousness is to actually see the energies that exist in your field very much like this, as a multiverse that you can actually explore in multiple dimensions, the opportunities that avail you. And that's what astrology does. It actually starts to broaden your awareness. You start to connect with the information and wisdom of multiple past lives, of multiple future selves. I've had an experience where I stood in my living room, and while I was in this reality, I simultaneously dropped into a parallel world, which I could see, hear, feel, touch at the same time as I could see, hear, feel, and touch this world. I can say it's a very disorienting experience. I wouldn't recommend anybody necessarily doing that unless you're ready for it, because you simultaneously exist in two times and spaces. But it points to exactly this diagram, that the future is not linear, and neither is the past. And people say, oh, but you can't change the past. Well, consider this, that simple example, right? Something happened in your past where you got really annoyed with your dad, right? And your dad did something and you're holding this grudge against him. So there's one timeline, right? The moment that you bring compassionate awareness to the fact that just like you, he was suffering, and just like you, he has pains and struggles, and you liberate that, the timeline shifts, right? There is no longer that struggling timeline. It doesn't exist. You've freed it. You've liberated it. This is why in many ancient traditions, and especially, from my own people, because I'm a Maori Hawaiian by birth, that the indigenous people speak about 7 generations, that when we free somebody from the pains of our past, we actually additionally free 7 generations back, because you actually break the timeline. So I'm not going to go into the Taurus model from the cosmological point of view, because it's related to a lot of quantum physics. But if you are interested, I can post this later and you can have a read through it, because there's some very interesting research that's been done into cosmological Taurus models. So just coming to a near closure of how this connects also to astrological awake awareness. So especially in Kriya Yoga and a lot of the Tibetan awareness practices, there's the relationship of each of these chakras being a planetary system. So as I said, to focus on the heart, for example, as Venus in the Vedic system of Yogananda and Swami Sri Yukteswar, is that when you actually begin and understand some of these esoteric practices of cycling energy and awareness around this, what Holly said, we are the cosmos, and that literally the cosmos is inside us, and we start to understand the map of the cosmos inside us and its potential to awaken and bring awareness. When we do that, many of the ancient traditions talk about different experiences arising, such as flute sounds, harp sounds, water sounds, ocean sounds, the primordial sounds, and that by cycling the energy, as Yogananda explained it, that as you start to move the energy around and understand this cosmological body that you are, that corresponds to the 12 astral signs of the zodiac, then that simple awareness actually brings through one revolution, a conscious, awake, aware revolution around this planetary system that exists within your subtle energy body. You bring about a quickening of evolution, as he and Babaji used to call it. So a natural quickening or speeding up of the process of evolution. So I always found that very curious, that Yogananda referred to this as revolving or energy, using energy like a torus field around the chakras and the planet, which were planets and astral zodiac signs in the human body. So this space practice that we did at the beginning, Holly, I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but you can.
It's about 6:20, so maybe another, I don't know, 10 minutes at the most, probably.
Okay. So I wanted to do a deeper space practice with you because I love this headless way version. It's such a beautiful consideration to think that we can go into this space of awareness that doesn't involve concept. It doesn't involve us thinking in our heads. It doesn't involve us tying ourselves to any past or future, that we simply are liberated, vast, boundless awareness. So I thought, before we do that, I know some people, you might have a question, you might have had some thoughts around this. So before we do this practice, is there anything that you'd like to talk to or ask me about in terms of what I've shared, or about the course, or about anything else?
Oh, so rich. Like could ask you about 5 million questions, but so thank you. This is amazing. But what's present was when you were talking about the cosmos, you had the diagram up of the planetary cosmos, Taurus, the planetary toric field.
Yeah. So, Holly, this one here, or
that one? No, that one.
This one.
That one. Yeah. And what was present was I was before this watching this incredible near-death experience story told by Peter Panagore, and I shared this on YouTube, on my Facebook, because in this near-death experience where he talks about his conversations with God, basically, and his experience, he said he experienced all the suffering that he'd ever given anybody else simultaneously with all the love. Like all the love and suffering that he'd received and given, he was simultaneously experiencing in one moment. And he talks over and over again in this about how there was no time and everything's collapsed. It's like, I can't even use conceptual words. They don't even make any sense, but here's my try at it, right? And I was just thinking about what you said about suffering in the context of what he experienced, how he experienced all this suffering simultaneously and love simultaneously. And I'm not sure the exact connection. I'm not, don't exactly have, but it at the time you were talking about this, there was a really important connection that felt like it was made.
I know exactly what you mean in terms of when you actually collapse the timeline of suffering, then all of the suffering that you've experienced can be simultaneously experienced in a single point, and equal, because at that point there is no time, right? Mm-hmm. And timelessness is unbound, therefore can embrace all of time. All of time can exist within the single point of timelessness, if you want to look at it that way. I mean, I'm failing with my words too, miserably, right. But equally within that single point is all of the love that has ever existed, that you've ever given, received, that exists in the cosmos. So it's as if a singularity occurs, unity, a moment of recognition that's so profound, because you realize the only separation that has occurred is because of this identity. The only separation that has created all the suffering is this identity. And the moment that the identity, like Muji says, has been left outside the door, then I love that thing of all those shoes, all those different size shoes that you've worn in so many lives. Actually, I got a lovely another passing it. Muji must have enjoyed that comment, because there was a beautiful surge of light across my room or across my windows. Is that when we do really leave aside our conceptual grasp of what we think that is actually occurring, then time collapses. There is no, just like in this diagram, it's no longer a linear aspect, that at this single unity, there is no longer any time that we're bound by. We are literally unbound. So all the suffering can actually arise at that moment. You know, there's often, you reminded me of when people have described near-death through drowning experience, and how everything suddenly in these few moments that they'd ever experienced in their life, all any of the stuff actually suddenly started to unravel. And you realize that the only, you know, that consciousness is boundless, right? There is no, when we have those moments of aha, they are always like that. They're like timeless, boundless, unconditional loving, you know, synchronous, you know, even the currency of synchronicity, if you think of synchronicity taken to its absolute, it means everything is occurring at that moment, firing off that one particular moment. So the conceptual mind says, that's not possible. And of course it's not in the conceptual mind. It's not possible to think of all those separate events as being one unity, but or one singularity, but in terms of the boundless awareness, it's just as possible. And that's the whole, you know, coming back to the whole power of astrology and its relationship with the stars. It really originally was a system of developing this unbound relationship with the cosmos. It's simply that. It's making the stars and the planets and the entire field our family.
Right. And then the other, the entire field is our family. And relatedly to that, that's a perfect segue into the other comment I was going to make, because I'm very present to the other ideas that have come into my consciousness in the last 2 days, which are something that Peter Panagore, again, and this is such an extraordinary near-death experience. I'll absolutely recommend anybody to listen to his story. It is so extraordinary, and I'll share that link when I share this. And he said that while he's in this near-death experience, and he looked back on Earth, and he saw a holographic Earth where he could see absolutely every person, all 7 billion people, and know their lives all at the same time. And I'm very present to the extraordinary work of Sky Isaac Nelson, who I'm going to have on this show in a few weeks, who's this physicist who's putting together this extraordinary view of our universe as a holographic universe, this hypothesis that he's working on and he's writing papers on, and he's, you know, kind enough to kind of bring us along and share these evolving views. And it says that, and as I was talking to him, it's the same concept, right? That the universe is holographic, which means that every single, if you think of it like a pixel, every single pixel has a view of every single other pixel and is influenced by every single other pixel. And so none are separate. There's a whole, because they're, which means that like each of us, if we think of ourselves as viewing out the world, we have our own unique view on the world that is, it totally blows apart this idea that there's some objective universe that feels like we're in this fixed objective universe, right? But instead,
absolutely,
right, our view influences everybody else's view simultaneously, which, you know, when you listen to Peter Panagore's description of what he saw, that's what he saw in his extraordinary accounting. And so as I'm thinking about the holographic universe and what you just described, can you comment a little bit about where astrology fits into this holographic universe evolving understanding?
Sure. So the astrological view of the cosmos is that we're not separate from it, right? And that really simply, in the same way as Peter experienced the 7 billion beings on Earth, that you can equally experience the multiplicity of stars, civilizations, planets in the cosmos simultaneously. That there is fundamentally no difference between what Peter experienced and say what Yogananda experienced in cosmic consciousness, or when over the years when I've had direct experiences of cosmic consciousness, I've noticed two types of things, even though it's not binary in any sense, but there is one experience I had was where I was literally everybody in my community. So I could actually feel what everybody was doing simultaneously. So that was a very unique experience where I actually, and curiously, after that, I remember going outside and everybody was doing exactly what I'd already experienced. So it was a very, it was a beautiful way of actually touching that essence and all people to know that, okay, that's a really wonderful confirmation. And the opposite also happened when I was doing Yogananda's practice for many years. And there were a number of occasions where I would literally, the identity is lost and there is an experience usually remembered afterwards. It's quite curious. You often don't remember it at the time because you're identityless, but shortly afterwards, an experience of cosmic consciousness. In this case, it was as if there's not an I, but I'm doing it because I fail in words again, as if I was in every single atom of the entire cosmos. So I could feel into the hearts of stars and planets and nebula and galaxies and gases and solids and non-solids. And it was just this extraordinary sense of being everything, much the same way as Peter described experiencing all the 7 billion human beings. There's a simultaneous awareness that arises, and it seems to be, there is a, can I say a subtle difference between experiencing all the atoms in the cosmos and the 7 billion inhabitants. It's fundamentally no difference, but the felt way that it's described, because all the people, me included, suffer from a lack of the vocabulary to put it into words what's actually happening. But there is a fundamental awareness that is non-dual, that is limitless, that is in everything. So there's this intimacy with all things. So speaking to the astrology gives you a wisdom and an intimacy with everything. Particularly, so if we sat down and said we're going to study the past lives of all 7 billion human beings, or somebody say that's impossible, but Peter clearly showed through simultaneous awareness that it's not. And the same thing if somebody said, look, we're going to touch the entire cosmos and all of existence and everything that's unfolding, your conceptual mind would say, no, that's impossible. But what astrology does is it takes you into that experience and into a lot of the esoteric practices we're going to do on that foundation, are on the foundation of touching the unfolding of the cosmos in lots of different ways. So it speaks to that.
That's so, I love what you just said, because what the aha that I got from that is, we typically think of astrology, I'll speak for myself, I typically think of astrology as a knowledge, something to acquire, some knowledge to acquire so you understand the universe, right? And that's all stuck in the conceptual mind when we're talking about studying the stars and studying relationships. All of this is happening at the level of the very limited conceptual mind, and some relationships that we might draw and say, oh, that's cool. That's what I hear you saying is, that's like interesting and all, but actually that's fundamentally not at all what you're teaching or what you're talking, because what you're talking about is actual experiences, which is actually, stepping into awareness practices. So we have felt experiences of our connection as the cosmos.
Exactly. And I was just going to go back to the biofield. So, I can ask you about your own practice. When you're working with people's biofield doing sound tuning, there's an intuitive sense you have from practicing, from getting to know that system, where you can't put into words what happens, but you connect to somebody and say, oh, at 15 years old, I can feel this happened, or I'm feeling a certain tension, or there's a struggle, and people confirm that. And that's not coming direct, you haven't read a book about the person that says at 15 years old, you've actually tapped in to their biofield and into the energy and information and consciousness that exists in the biofield of that person. And it's the same way in astrology. by starting to tune yourself into a cosmological system that goes beyond our fairly limited perception of what we normally think about every day, which tends to be our day-to-day tasks, by starting to tap into this, let's call it a wider biofield. So we're looking at the biofield of the Earth and the biofield of the planets and the biofield of the stars, right? Suddenly and you can't explain how or why, but suddenly something switches on and it opens up a portal, and just like you do with sound tuning, it opens up an energy, information, and consciousness field that you weren't even aware of before. And you suddenly start to bring through information either about your life or about other people's lives or about the lives of the stars themselves, or the fields that exist around, planetary bodies and stellar bodies that are just, it will just shock you because you don't know where they've come from. So it speaks to the same experience you're already present to in sound.
I thank you. Actually, that for me, I hope that landed for other listeners too. But for me, that was the perfect analogy because I understand this, working. And what I hear for other people who are listening is when I work on a biofield, there's a very intuitive sense that I tap into the field where I am intuiting and feeling something that happened in somebody's life. And it becomes a felt experience for me. Like their sadness at age 15 becomes my sadness. And I feel that. And what I hear you saying is, actually, when you start to understand what Yogananda was and the other astrologers were saying about our relationship in the central channel to these planets, now you're actually bringing in energies from the planets, which are actually already in your spine. They're already part of you, and you're starting to actually have felt experiences with them.
Exactly. You become aware of them, perhaps for the first time in your life. We know that we have molecules of Christ in our body at any one time, right? But we're usually not aware of them. But everybody knows if you tune into, say, a Christian mystic or a Christ path, that they start to awaken, right? You become much more aware and you become enamored with Christ and you become enamored. And it's the same way with the cosmos. You start to become really connected. And why wouldn't we? When you consider that everything is a unity and that everything is just one thing.
It's just one thing.
It's just one thing.
There's only one thing happening here.
Exactly. Then why wouldn't you want to learn about that one thing from all its myriad perspectives, which opens you to a whole new book of life, because suddenly you will be aware, just like you are in the sound attunements, that you tap into things beyond the conceptual mind, into this felt sense that is like a portal that opens you up to what's beyond the conceptual mind. And that in itself, just stepping beyond the conceptual mind, is such an aha for people. So, all the experiences I did, every single lesson of the course I do has direct experiential practices drawn from the ancient astrology, drawn from Vedic and Tibetan and alchemy, astrological practice.
So what you're saying is that so the fact that Venus is in my heart, you actually have practices that it's not just about Venus being in your heart. Of course, there's some really important felt experiences about that you start to help people tune into.
Correct.
I couldn't even imagine what those are, but you'll teach us, I assume, for those on the course.
Well, it's a little bit like Tantra, in Tantric practices. So I studied Tantra with the Dalai Lama for a long time, and they have what are called generation and completion practices. And the generation is basically the creation of the awareness, and the completion practices is where the awareness arises spontaneously. So using your analogy of Venus, it's the same fundamental practice. You learn to awaken the energies of the cosmos through a particular portal, just like you might through a particular deity. In the Vedic practices, Venus is actually a goddess, like in the Greek traditions. And a lot of the esoteric practices of the Greeks, of the ancient indigenous peoples, used this aspect of the goddess nature, for example, because we're talking about Venus, to awaken those qualities within the human being so that you become that boundless love. So that you actually understand that access point through awakening the planetary consciousness within you. And as you start, so you work on the different planets, obviously, just like sound tuning, that you in your training, you learn how to access different aspects of the field. You often don't come in and grasp the whole thing immediately. You have a process that you go through. So we go through a process of awakening consciousness through using the energies of the spheres, like the harmony of the spheres is spoken about in so many terms. So it's a very novel and a very enlightening way. And as I said, as a young kid, I just wondered if Swami Sri Yukteswar and the Dalai Lama and all these practitioners from all these ancient traditions, the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Taoists, they all used astrology. They all, still today in Japan, you can go to the temples and the monks will give you reading, all kinds of readings and access and points, derived from an understanding of the cosmos. And I always found that so informative to say, we are the cosmos. We're not separate from it. There's only one thing. And then it helps us in our everyday awake awareness practices to touch the universal reality, to touch the boundlessness of our being, right? Because we need those reminders. In simple terms, we need to be reminded that we're not the body. And in fact, we're a much more limitless body, in using the phrase body, that we're not the identity, that we're a much more limitless being. We need those reminders. I mean, that's the challenge for people in awake awareness practices is they have glimpses, but then it's difficult to stabilize, right?
Right.
And so these particular astrological awake awareness practices are all derived from, instead of relating to awake awareness through a glimpse that is more looking at body, feelings, perceptions, and thoughts, it actually does it from the awareness of a cosmological relationship with either planets or stars or astral bodies. It's a very astral oriented practice, so it can become either very visionary or really deeply felt sense, especially when you wake up to when the Venus energies, for example, not in the generation stage, but in the completion stage arise, there is this awesome connected feeling to the entire cosmos as love. A little bit like Peter described connecting to 7 billion human beings. Well, connect to the multi-billion stars, literally, as a felt experience. And it opens your eyes to the miraculous nature of the human being.
Wow. Oh, that's extraordinary. I love
extraordinary. It's all of us here are extraordinary. I think that's what you're really pointing to, is that the quality of aha and awe and wonder is who we are. We are this extraordinary beingness, and we are this extraordinary lit awareness.
Yeah, it's reminded of what Michael Singer says in one of the last podcasts I listened to. He says, "We're on Disneyland. You just don't realize it."
Yes, exactly.
The entire planet is, and of course, so much more than that. But it's it's a sweet reminder.
Exactly. There is a completely new language that's evolving in this current, with the pandemic, with all the pain and suffering that people are going through, as Sky, I'm sure we'll talk about, there's this whole new language of the synchronicity of the miraculous, the power of being, the wonder of the Disneyland experience in every moment. I always think of Kiefer and his Jedi sword when I think of Disneyland. And, we are all Jedis from that point of view, where we literally have access to that universal force or source at every moment. We just don't realize it.
Absolutely, we do. Yeah. And the closer the more we remember, the more we learn how to harness it, which is really, when you get to the heart of what HeartMind Alchemy Lab is and what we're trying to do, it's like we're all trying to learn to be Jedis, right? We're all trying to harness the vital force within and recognize the one thing.
Exactly. Holly, that might be the best place to leave it with. I was going to do a space practice, but if you want to do more space practice, you could come and join the course, because I recognize that our time is probably at its end. Have we got enough time to do this?
It's really up to you, Altair. I mean, it's 6:42. I have time, but it's really up to you.
Okay. Well, I'll do a very short practice, because it is a nice way to end with everybody listening. So please enjoy, and I'll make it brief in my own brief Altair way. So enjoy. So if you just take your customary position, however you decide to meditate or practice, you can do that now. And we're going to turn into a simple awareness of space. So this is really at the foundation of all the astrological practices, but it's a very basic one. And that is spacious awareness, that we never experience anything in any moment other than this pure, boundless space. Spacious awareness, awareness of space, awareness of vastness. So if you close your eyes customarily, do that. If you have your eyes open, do that. If they're half open, do that. And most of all, be still, check in with the body, find the stillness, openness, and spaciousness in your body, a still, silent, floating immersion, as if your body is resting in an ocean of stars of beingness and the vastness of the cosmos. So you're just simply resting there, and you're aware of this vastness. You're aware of this boundlessness of awareness, that the cosmos itself is infinite, silent, still, and spacious. So let go and rest for a moment in this open, effortless awareness, and notice the quiet space in which your thoughts and feelings and perceptions come and go. And settle into this spaciousness with ease and relaxation. And simply sink and drop deeper and deeper and deeper into this felt sense of this vast, infinite, boundless space. And be aware of who is aware of this space. It's awareness recognizing itself as awareness of space, the space of being. Notice that awareness recognizes itself. Turn inwards towards the one who's aware of space, boundless space, of all that's present, of this knowingness, this felt sense. It's the felt sense that's vast and boundless and ungraspable. This open, clear, vast space of awareness. Awareness that's alive and awake. Now, gently open your eyes and be very still. Still mind, still eyes, still body, and gaze straight ahead into space. Normally we focus on objects, but here we're orienting to space itself and noticing how open and unobstructed this space is. Notice the quality of openness. Notice the space. Feel the space. Feel the quality of openness. And then feeling that quality of openness, of vastness, this never-endingness of space, close your eyes and let go and rest in that quality of openness. Keep that same quality of openness and vastness you're present to, and to continue to look straight ahead into space now with your eyes closed. Keep that same quality of spaciousness and extend your gaze infinitely beyond the boundaries of your room into vast, infinite space with this inward gaze, complete openness, unobstructed space. Now tighten your inner gaze and bring it to about where the walls of your room might be with your eyes closed. Notice how it's still space, open, quiet, and peaceful, unobstructed space. Now tighten your inner gaze and bring it right into just in front of your eyes. Notice how it's still space, open, pure and vast. Even though it's just in front of your eyes, it's vast, unobstructed. Now turn inwards towards the one that's aware of this space, ungraspable, unfindable, this quality of space. Feel this unfindable, ungraspable nature of space. Merge your mind and completely dissolve your mind into space and relax completely, absolutely, naturally, spontaneously. Rest without effort in the past. As you rest, keep the mind still, the body still, the eyes still. That stillness and drop into the Venus energies of your heart and feel this openness and this stillness that's saturated with love, saturated with consciousness of Venus itself. Vastness, the stillness. Feel the vastness and the stillness and the love simultaneously, boundlessly. Now slowly, slowly open your eyes in that childlikeness and awe, this gratitude, this lovingness, and let yourself rest with open eyes, very still, spacious and open. This clear, boundless space of awareness that clings to nothing and pushes nothing away. Feel this unobstructed freedom within this space of awareness. All things arising and floating, all thoughts, perceptions, feelings, just like your body, unobstructed and free. Sense and feel this openness, this spacious awareness, so vast and boundless. Simple allowing, formlessness so naturally and effortlessly present. As you go about your day, rest in this felt sense of this spacious, open, infinite vastness. Thank you truly for your divine, immaculate practice. And thank you, Holly, for the opportunity to share these incredible blessings with everybody. And thank you all for listening. It's more than an honor. I can feel your collective beauty and presence, just like a child.
Thank you so very much for that practice.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Beautiful.
Lovely to end like that.
Yes, absolutely. That was extraordinary. Beautiful information. And so just for everybody watching, there's a course that Stephen is leading starting Monday. Do you want to just say a little bit about it? Maybe then we can also say a little bit about our Hawaii retreat.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to. So the course begins this Monday at 9 p.m. EDT time, which if you're in Japan like I am, it's 10 a.m. the following day. So if you're in Australia, it's 11 a.m. So EDT being the Eastern time, the US. So that's not the European time, as some people have asked me. And it's a 10-week course. So we are particularly looking at the soul insights of Vedic astrology combined with the alchemy and psychoanalysis of Western astrology and the ancient Tibetan astrology awareness training. So it's very unique, and the whole purpose being to guide you into awakening and awareness. So we're doing this with a whole variety of methods, modern psychology, flow techniques, neuro-linguistic programming, many secular methods to unleash the powers of the cosmos within you and assist you in your meditation practice, in your awareness, daily awake awareness practices, lucid dreaming practices, and helping bring stability, peace, and calm throughout this period when a lot of the world is struggling with all kinds of different issues. So I really I'd love to join you. There's no obstacle in terms of finance. If you find you're struggling in finances because of the pandemic, just contact me. I can easily make or create an opportunity for you to join us. And we've already got 20 lovely people joining us from all over the planet. So I feel incredibly privileged and loved and cherished already. And I'm simply going to share with you many of the ancient practices of the masters and how they've taught and shared these ancient astrological practices. And equally, Holly, as you know, we are going to Hawaii. So I know you can speak a little bit about it, and I will too. So Holly and I are taking a retreat to a beautiful meditation yoga retreat on Maui Island, and it's a place called Lemuria. And we're doing that on November the 15th to the 21st this year. And we'll also have another one in February of next year. So this is the Precious Heart, or the Heart Awakening, or the Precious Heart Retreat. And we're going to include lots of practices: yoga, meditation, mystical practices, Kundalini awakening, lucid dreaming, healing sessions, and more besides. So Holly will talk to you about the more besides. There are details available on the HeartMindAlchemy.com site. And if you want to connect with me on the Astrological Awakening, you can do that through the altairlove.com, love.com. So, but anyway, either of us can get you there, or you can just contact me on Facebook. It's fine. So Holly, I'm very excited about our retreat, because not only is it a beautiful place, but the program is a wonderful opportunity to share. We've got a couple of people who have indicated their interest already. We need 10 for the retreat to run, so we'd really encourage you, even just to express your interest would be great, because we'd love to have you join us on either of those, but especially on the November one. So Holly, just anything else you'd like to add about that?
Well, the other, thank you. And I'm super excited about, both opportunities. And in terms of the retreat, I'm going to be bringing a lot of wearable technology and offering sessions for people to try it out. So we'll be having lots of conversation about, Mudes headsets and brainwave graphs. If you want to go there, if you'd like opportunities to try Mendi or Neo-Rhythm, or I think I have, 12 devices or something. So I'm going to provide some sessions where people can try and experiment. And we'll talk about the neuroscience behind meditation. And I'll also be offering brainwave scans using Wavi, if people want that. That's a little more in depth, but if you want a baseline brainwave scan with a 19-channel EEG, I'm going to bring my Wavi and provide that opportunity. So lots of places to merge ancient wisdom and modern science and help people on their journey. And we just love doing that work to support you. So come join us.
Yeah, we really do encourage you to join us. It will be a lot of fun, and it's just a magical opportunity to do a little travel at what I recognize is also a challenging time to travel. So we do know that people in Australia, for example, on lockdown may not be able to join us. So we're hoping Australia might be free by next year. And additionally, Kevin and I are running a Raising Our Vibration Subtle Energy Meditation course coming up very soon. So if you would like to avail yourself of that, go to raisingourvibration.net and you can find out anything about that. And any of the other things we've mentioned, right, Holly, the wisdom path, the conscious accelerator, you can find out about those through my website or through contacting Holly and I.
Or through heartmindalchemy.com. Yep.
Yeah, through heartmindalchemy.com.
So, all right, well, have a lovely weekend, everybody. Blessings and love to all. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your incredible and deep wisdom with us, Altair.
Well, thank you for your incredible deep wisdom too, Green Tara Holly.
All right.
You're truly a Dakini, right? Just as many of you wondrous beings out there, the Dharmakaya to me, so Holly is the Dakini to me, to the Dakini Green Tara. So it's wonderful to, as you go about your day, I do encourage you to see your home as a mandala, to see your beautiful neighbors and friends as Buddhas, Dakinis, Yoginis, and the sweetness and the power of perception can actually be turned to great use when you actually really do see, as I often tell my daughter, you are a Buddha, right? Yeah. From when she was very little. So helping to confirm and remind ourselves of that we truly do exist in that realm helps us to go beyond the ordinary perception of what we perceive day to day and into the heart of our infinite possibilities as human beings.
The world truly is as you see it. I mean, it really is from within. There's no question. Right. Well,
Holly, thank you for the wonder of your company. You truly are a miraculous host. So hopefully lots of people had wonderful experiences from listening and sharing in this amazing show that you have every week. So
thank you.
Incredibly grateful to you.
Well, it's the show it is because of all the incredible people out there. I mean, I'm constantly amazed at the wisdom and beautiful sharing that people have to do. And it's my great honor and pleasure to be able to host this. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your support in the show.